Huge story at the top of the corporate UK. BP has appointed Woodside boss Meg O'Neill as its next CEO, replacing Murray Auchincloss after less than 2 years in the role. Now, Auchincloss will step down today, with Carol Howell, BP's Executive Vice President for Supply, Trading and Shipping, set to serve as interim CEO until O'Neill takes over the role on April 1st. Dan, you have had, in fact, very recently, I think you spoke to Meg O'Neill as well, but I mean, brilliant interview, I know that was as well, and I know you're going to just recap what you think of Meg O'Neill as well, but it's a fascinating story all across many aspects.
Absolutely, Steve, and this is already being spoken about inside the OPEC circles and already being spoken about among the analyst community as well, because it comes really just months after we saw Albert Manifold taking over as chair, and it really underscores how quickly the board is moving to reset the strategy at BP. Of course, Auchincloss himself had already signalled that he was open to stepping aside if the board found a leader who could move faster on that strategy, and there was always a sense that this was really a transitional role for him. I actually saw Murray Auchincloss at events in Vienna and Abu Dhabi this year, and look, putting his solid experience to one side, he never really projected the profile of a chief executive looking to put a long-term personal stamp on the company, I would contend. And even at the time of his appointment, some investors, some analysts really viewed him more as a stabilizer than a permanent CEO. So what we've seen here is the board really moving to bring in a clear change agent at the top. Meg O'Neill is, of course, going to be the first outsider to run BP in its 116-year history, and importantly, the first woman to hold the role as well, really marking a clean break, finally, from BP's traditional company man leadership model. Of course, she was born and raised in Colorado. She spent 2 decades at ExxonMobil, and at Woodside, she really built a reputation as a smart oil and gas executive with a strong focus on capital discipline. Meg O'Neill and I actually met on stage in Saudi Arabia at FII earlier this year. So our team has pulled together a slice of that conversation to offer us a clear window into how she thinks about energy demand and LNG. So listen into some of this exchange.
One of the questions we ask ourselves regularly is what is going to be the demand profile for decades to come, recognizing when we make an investment decision, we're going to be producing a product for 15, 20, 30, or even 40 years. We've got deep conviction around the role of LNG as, in many ways, finding the sweet spot between reliability, affordability, and sustainability. When we talk to customers in places like North Asia and Europe and ask them what they want, they say, we want all 3 factors. And when we then say, well, what are you willing to pay for lower carbon intensity, the answer is often 0 or near 0. So that has underpinned our focus on LNG. We see LNG as a fuel that has not only been essential for helping those energy-poor nations in North Asia and Northern Europe meet their energy needs for the last few decades, but it will also be essential. And when we look at the forecast, we expect LNG demand to grow 50% over the coming decade.